In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. A very brief recapitulation of what we have been doing now, and the next step would be where we are going to go. The first point that you must continue to remind yourself is that the retreat is about you and no one else. So if you only focus on yourself during these days, that will be enough. And because the retreat is about you, and because you have been invited to be silent, and because silence means both external and internal silence, there is the danger that the demons will catch up with you. The demons of being afraid to be alone. The demons of not being able to be active and engaged in activity. The demons of not being able to converse with your companions at meal times or at other times. The demons of frustration, the demons of anxiety, the demons of anger, the demons of envy, the demon of jealousy. All these demons will catch up with you, and then you might run away from that silence. In order to run away from the demons, you might run away from the silence, and this is exactly what the devil wants. I very rarely talk about the devil and about temptations, but this, sisters, is a real temptation of the devil, because the devil does not want you to be by yourself. The devil does not want you to be by yourself, because the devil knows that when you are by yourself, then you will encounter Christ. And the devil doesn't want you to do that. The devil prefers that you remain a very good social worker. The devil prefers that you remain a very efficient administrator. The devil prefers that you be a very good teacher and that you get involved in technology and are able to reach your students online and are able to communicate with your teachers, are able to communicate with your professors, and you're doing a fantastic job, and your school and your administration and the place which you run is known all over the city. The devil prefers that. But the devil does not prefer that your institution be a beacon, be the salt and the light, and it will be if you encounter the Lord. And that is why, both in the talk last night and in the talk this morning, I kept on insisting that there is, if you like, one goal, one aim, one point of a retreat. And it is the encounter with Christ. Today, my sisters, I want to take you a little deeper into giving you an understanding first of how you will encounter Christ. Second, on the blocks, the impediments, the challenges, I prefer to use the word challenges, that will come in the way of your encountering Christ, and the result and the consequence of your encountering him. But before I do that, you need to ask yourselves a very, very important question, which only you can answer. And the question is this: do I desire to meet the person of Jesus? Do I want to say, like Paul says in 1 Corinthians 9:1, am I not an apostle? Have I not met Jesus the Lord? Do you want to meet this Jesus who is the same yesterday, today, and forever? And if you want to meet him, and if you're serious about meeting him, and if the desire in your heart is genuine, then you will encounter him. And believe me when I say that your life will be transformed as a result of your encountering him. In order to take you through this encounter, I want to take you through Luke chapter 19, verses 1 to 10. Luke chapter 19, verses 1 to 10. It is the story of the encounter of Zacchaeus with Jesus. But before I go to Luke chapter 19, verses 1 to 10, I want to take you back to Luke chapter 9, verse 51. Luke 9:51 begins what is known as Luke's journey narrative or Luke's travel narrative, because in this chapter and verse we read, when the days drew near for Jesus to be taken up, that is, taken up to heaven, he set his face to go to Jerusalem. So when the days drew near for his death, his resurrection, and his ascension, when the days drew near, he set his face toward Jerusalem. Some translations have, he set his face as flint. That means, if you were to take a matchstick and rub it on the face of Jesus, you would get a light. That is how determined he was to go to Jerusalem. And right at the beginning, on his way to Jerusalem, he has to pass through a Samaritan town. Now, for the Samaritans, Jerusalem was not the place of worship. And so when Jesus sends disciples ahead of him to tell the Samaritan town that he is passing through, the Samaritans say, please do not come to our village. Please do not pass through our town, because Jerusalem is not our place. Now, the brothers James and John are very angry. How can a Samaritan town reject Jesus? What do they mean? And they say, should we ask fire to come down from heaven? Should we get violent? Should we get angry with them? And Jesus says, no, that is not my way. That is the way of the world. But that is not my way. Let us go another way. It's a longer way. It doesn't matter. Because if someone will not accept me, I will not force myself on that individual. Revelation chapter 3, verse 20 brings this out so beautifully when it says, behold, I stand at your door and knock. I stand at your door and knock. That is, I take the initiative. I take the first step. I come right up to the entrance of your door, but I will knock. I will not force myself in. I will not put pressure on you to open. If you open, I will come in and sit down to supper with you and you with me. So I will not force my presence on anyone. I will not force myself on anyone. I respect your freedom. I respect your free will too much for me to force myself on you. And that is why he does not go through that Jerusalem, that Samaritan town, but he goes by another way. However, the point I want to make to you is this, that Jesus will not be deterred. He will continue. He will persevere, he will reach Jerusalem. And so we come to chapter 19, verse 1. Notice he's on his way from chapter 9:51, chapter 10, 11, 12, 13, up to chapter 19. He is on his way resolutely towards Jerusalem. He will not stop anywhere. He will not waste time. He will not tarry. He wants to reach his destination. He wants to reach his goal. And Jerusalem will be that place on earth when he will begin that journey to heaven. And so Luke tells us in chapter 19, verse 1, he entered Jericho and was passing through. So very clearly, the reason why he enters Jericho is only so that he can pass through on his way to Jerusalem. Jericho was on the way to Jerusalem. And so he enters Jericho to pass through. And then Luke introduces to us a very, very beautiful figure, a wonderful personality, and that is the person of Zacchaeus. So we know that Jesus has entered Jericho, and the reason why he has entered Jericho is because he wants to pass through. No other reason. He does not intend to stop in Jericho. He does not intend to spend the night in Jericho. He wants to pass through in order that he might reach Jerusalem. And as soon as Luke tells us about Zacchaeus, he gives us 4 details about Zacchaeus. And the first is that Zacchaeus was a chief tax collector. A chief tax collector means surely Zacchaeus would have been in a higher position than Matthew or Levi, who are only tax collectors. It is very likely that the chief tax collector like Zacchaeus would have had a number of tax collectors working under him. He would have possibly been the supervisor of a number of tax collectors like Matthew or like Levi. So he's a chief tax collector. Second, he is rich. Third, he was trying to see Jesus. And then Luke gives us a detail into the physics of his personality. He was short in stature. So we can see this man who is a chief tax collector, who is rich, who desires and wants to see Jesus. That's all Zacchaeus wants. And we are told he was short in stature. All this is in order for Luke to build up the story. How does Luke build up the story? By giving us these 4 details. First, he was a chief tax collector. In the Gospel of Luke, Jesus has been shown to be a good friend of tax collectors. Luke chapter 5, verse 27. Luke chapter 5, verses 29 to 30. Luke chapter 7, verse 29. Luke chapter 7, verse 34. And especially Luke chapter 15, verse 1. The context of the 3 parables, the lost sheep, the lost coin, and the prodigal father, are told in the context of Jesus eating and drinking with tax collectors and sinners. So in Luke 15:1, we are told that Jesus is eating and drinking with tax collectors and sinners, and the religious leaders of that time complained. So, Luke says, so he told them this parable. And that parable led to another parable, and another parable led to the third parable, the prodigal father. In Luke chapter 18, verses 10 and 13, he talks about this tax collector who went home justified with God because of his humility. So Jesus in the Gospel of Luke is a friend of tax collectors. So it seems very likely that because Zacchaeus is not only a tax collector but a chief tax collector, Jesus will make himself known, will be his friend. However, Luke cautions us, he was rich. And so the question is, will his riches come in the way of his encountering Jesus? If there is one gospel which is very clearly anti-rich, it is the Gospel of Luke. It is only in the Gospel of Luke chapter 6 verse 20 that we read, "Blessed are you poor." Matthew chapter 5 verse 13 will have, Matthew chapter 5 verse 3 will have, "Blessed are the poor in spirit." Blessed are the poor in spirit. Here Luke has, "Blessed are you poor." Poor, you poor, not the poor in spirit. So very clearly, Luke's is the gospel of the poor. And only Luke's gospel, Luke chapter 6 verse 24, has, "Woe to you rich. Blessed are you poor, woe to you rich." So the woe is pronounced against the rich only in the Gospel of Luke. The parable of the rich fool, Luke chapter 12, verses 13 to 21, is found only in the Gospel of Luke. The fool has got barns, and in his barns he's got crops. And now he wants to build bigger barns, and says to himself, "When I build all those big barns, I will say to myself, take it easy." And the Lord says, "You fool." The Lord calls the man a fool. "You fool, tonight you are required to come." And the reason why the Lord calls him a fool is because he has made his riches God. And the book of Proverbs says, "The fool says in his heart or her heart, there is no God." Only the fool says there is no God. So the parable of the rich fool is found only in the Gospel of Luke. It is only in Luke that we find the parable of the rich man and Lazarus, Luke chapter 16, verses 19 to 31. As a matter of fact, there is only one parable which Jesus told, in which a character is named, and it is this one, the story of the rich man and Lazarus. Dives is not a name. Dives is the Latin for rich. And that's why the story of the rich man, but the one who is named is the poor man, Lazarus, whose name means God helps. God comes to the aid. God rescues. That is the meaning of the name Lazarus, Lazar. God helps. It is only in the Gospel of Luke that we read about the rich ruler. In the other Gospels, he is a man, either a rich young man or a rich man in Mark, rich young man in Matthew. But in Luke, he is a rich ruler. Luke 18 to 35. So very clearly, Luke's Gospel, besides being many other things, is anti-rich. These parables are found only in the Gospel of Luke. And so we ask, Zacchaeus is a chief tax collector, and Jesus can be his friend because Jesus is a friend of tax collectors and sinners. At the same time, Zacchaeus is rich, and we ask, will his riches come in the way of his encountering Jesus? The third detail is very, very crucial, and we will see how, because of this detail, Zacchaeus gets what he wants. And the third detail is this: he was trying to see Jesus. Or another translation, he wanted to see Jesus, or he desired to see Jesus. Any of these three translations is okay. He was trying to see Jesus, he desired to see Jesus, he wanted to see Jesus. We're not told why. However, we know that this wanting, this desire, this trying is genuine. It's a real try, not simply for the sake of it. And I will show you how. And then we are given another detail. He was short in stature. So we ask ourselves, but why does Luke tell us that he's short in stature? This is the only time when Luke is giving us details about this man, that he's short in stature, that he was rich is okay, that he was the chief tax collector is okay, that he desired to see okay. But why does he tell us that he was short in stature? Can't short people see Jesus? Do you have to be tall in order to see Jesus? No. Luke will introduce here the crowd which prevents him. That's why Luke has to tell us this. If Luke had only to say there was a crowd because of which he could not see, we would wonder why. But when Luke tells us he was short and there was a crowd, then our minds can picture the scene. Zacchaeus is behind tall people and he can only see their backs. He can't see anything beyond the backs of those who stand in front of him. And that's why Luke adds this detail that he was short in stature. And so, my sisters, before we can go into the details of the story, I want to ask you to place yourself in the position of Zacchaeus. And how would you do that? First, Zacchaeus is a chief tax collector and Jesus is a friend of tax collectors. You have given yourself to the Lord selflessly. You have made a commitment to the Lord in the society, in the congregation of the Apostolic Carmelites. You have made your first profession, you have made your interim professions, and you have made your final profession where you have said to the Lord, Lord, I want to be yours totally and completely. I want to belong, Lord, only to you. So this is your identification with the Lord, like Zacchaeus' identification with being a tax collector or a chief tax collector. This is where you are identical with Zacchaeus. Your riches, my sisters, could be your pride. You may not have external riches. You may be a very simple person. You are managing with just the basics and you live a very Spartan life. So it is not so much your external riches as your pride, as your ego, as your self-sufficiency, as your envy, as your jealousy, as your hard-heartedness. All of these can be your riches. Third, do you want to meet Jesus? Do you want to see him? Do you want to encounter him? In the exercises, the spiritual exercises, Ignatius has a question for the retreatant. And the question is this: do you desire? And the retreatant may say, no, not yet. I cannot get the desire into my heart. The second question then, do you desire? To desire, if you say yes, even that is enough for the Lord. And so in the same vein, I ask you, do you want to see Jesus? And you say, I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure. And then I say, do you want to see Jesus? Even that is enough. It doesn't matter if you're short. It doesn't matter if you're tall. It does not matter what position you have in your congregation. You might be the superior. You might be a provincial. You might be an ex-general. You might be a present general. You might be a member of the community. You might be a teacher in a school. You might be a professor in a college. You might be working in the kitchen. No matter where. It doesn't matter. That is immaterial. Your short in stature does not matter. And so now, sisters, let us go through this with these 4 backgrounds in mind. Your own commitment to the Lord, Zacchaeus, a chief tax collector, your own riches, that is your challenges, your impediments, your obstacles, your wanting to see Jesus and you're going to see Jesus, and your short stature. And so imagine Zacchaeus standing, and in front of him there are people taller than Zacchaeus is, and there is a crowd. I call these 2 impediments, 2 obstacles, 2 hindrances, 2 problems. But the word I would prefer instead of all of these is 2 challenges. I avoid using words like hindrances, problems, obstacles, difficulties, impediments, even though I use them to explain what it means. But for all of these, I have another synonym, which I think is a better word: challenges. So Zacchaeus has 2 challenges. And what are those 2 challenges? First, he is short in stature. Second, there is a crowd. Notice now, it is only because both come together, his short stature and the crowd. It's only because both come together that he cannot see Jesus. Supposing there was no crowd, his short stature would not have mattered. Supposing there was a crowd, if he was tall, it would not have mattered. It is only because there is a crowd and he is short in stature that he cannot see Jesus. I said to you earlier that the third point, namely, he was trying to see Jesus, is important because his desire, his wanting to see Jesus, his trying to see Jesus is not a passing whim, it's not a passing fancy, but is real, is genuine, is deep. It is a profound desire. And that is why Zacchaeus will not give up. If the desire in the heart of Zacchaeus was not genuine, he would have said to himself, there is a crowd, I am short, and it seems the crowd is going to continue to be with Jesus because they are all hanging on his lips, they're all listening to him so intently. There is no chance for me to meet him. And so I will look at him another day. I will encounter him another day. I will meet him another day. And we know that Jesus had entered Jericho and was passing through. So there would be no another day. The word today, which is in Greek semeron, is a very, very important word in the Gospel of Luke. Luke uses this word 12 times. And of the 12 times, he uses it twice in this particular story. Shows you how important. There is no tomorrow. There is no yesterday. Today. Today means now. When Jesus tells the thief on the cross, today you will be with me in paradise. When the angels tell the shepherds, today is born for you a savior, today. So today is a very important word in Luke. So Zacchaeus could have said, this crowd is not going to disperse. They are going to continue to follow him wherever he goes. I am going to continue to be short, so I cannot see him. It's okay. It doesn't matter. I will give up. One of the qualities I said you must take with you to a retreat, as a matter of fact, a quality you must take with you wherever you go is the quality of perseverance, persistence, not giving up, holding on like the tentacles of an animal. You hold on. The tentacles of an octopus. Hold tightly. Don't give up. And so Zacchaeus is not going to give up. But the crowd is going to continue to be with Jesus. He's going to continue to be short. So how is he going to overcome this challenge? And this why Zacchaeus uses his mind and his heart. Sisters, while prayer has a lot to do with the heart, has even, if you like, most to do with the heart, one cannot keep one's mind completely aside when one is praying. We don't pray with our minds. We don't pray only with our lips. We don't pray only with the heart. We pray with the whole self. Sometimes it is more heart and less lips. Sometimes it's a lot of lips and not so much of heart. Sometimes it is mind and not so much of heart. Here, in the case of Zacchaeus, he uses both his mind and his heart, because prayer, my sisters, is not only with one part of your being, it is with the whole person. And what do I say? What do I mean when I say Zacchaeus uses both his mind and his heart? I say he uses his mind and his heart because he runs. And the running is an exercise of the heart. He wants to see Jesus. His heart desires. And so he runs. He's impatient. He runs to the place where Jesus is going to come. However, if Zacchaeus only used his heart, he would have run there to that place ahead where Jesus was to come, and he would have waited for Jesus there. The crowd would continue to follow Jesus. Zacchaeus would remain short. And once again, in that place to which he ran and waited for Jesus, he could not see Jesus because the crowd continued to come and he continued to remain to be short. And so he would run again and run again and run again. How far would he run? But Zacchaeus uses not only his heart, he uses his mind. So he runs ahead to the place where he knew Jesus would come, and he climbs a tree. Notice, now he's there before Jesus, and now he has become tall. So the crowd will not be an obstacle, nor will his short stature be an obstacle. He has overcome both the challenges, because he saw them as challenges and not as obstacles, not as difficulties, not as problems. So when they see something as a problem, when we see something as a difficulty, when we see something as a hurdle or an obstacle or an impediment, it is a little more difficult to overcome it. But we look at it as a challenge and say, this is an opportunity for me to overcome it and to show that I can overcome. So he runs ahead. and he climbs a sycamore tree. A sycamore tree was a tree which had wide branches. So it was easy to relax in the branches of that tree. And so Zacchaeus is very prudent also. He's very wise also in choosing the sycamore tree. Easy to climb and easy to rest in. So in that one action, running, climbing a tree, Zacchaeus shows a number of aspects of his own personality. First, it shows that his desire, his wanting is genuine. Second, it shows that for Zacchaeus, there is no later, there is no tomorrow. He is not a procrastinator, somebody who puts off things for the next moment and the next moment, and the next moment never comes. Zacchaeus is a man who uses his mind and who uses his heart. And Zacchaeus is a man, most of all, who has no ego. Why do I say he has no ego? Because at the time of Jesus, it was very unusual to see a grown man running. Grown men would run only in case of emergencies, when something was extremely important, or if they were slightly off their mind. Zacchaeus does not mind if people think he's out of his mind, because for him, seeing Jesus is now an emergency. This is how genuine, how real his desire is. He will persevere. He will not give up. And then, as Zacchaeus sits in those wide branches of the sycamore tree, he does something which many today find very, very difficult to do. He waits. W-A-I-T-S, waits. We are living in an instant world. We are living in a world of technology, fast movement. We are living in a world where we simply go to Google and get every answer that we need. And yet, we are living in a world today, in the COVID-19 pandemic, when we are being told, wait. Things will take time. Everyone is still anxious for the vaccine, and I want the vaccine, and this country wants the vaccine, and I will give the vaccine to the poor, and I will give the vaccine to these people. I will give the vaccine. Wait. Things will take time. We have to do what we have to do, but we cannot hurry. Somebody said so beautifully, impatience is trying to go faster than the Holy Spirit. That is what impatience is. And because we are living in this world of instant coffee and instant tea and instant noodles and instant food, we have now also become wanting answers, wanting responses instantly. Email. I wrote an email this morning. You have not replied after 1 hour. What has happened to you? But only 1 hour has passed. Let me wait for some time. I sent you a WhatsApp message in the morning. It's now 20 minutes. You've not seen my message. You've not replied because I don't take my phone with me. So you notice we have become so quick, we can't wait. And Zacchaeus knows how to wait. As a matter of fact, even though Luke does not say it, it seems quite likely that the reason why Zacchaeus may have chosen a sycamore tree is in order to be able to wait comfortably. And so, my sisters, one of the things that you might do is that in the chapel, you might be too stiff. If you experience fatigue, my sisters, when you are praying, if you experience boredom when the Eucharist is being celebrated, if you experience something of tiredness when you're in the chapel, it's very likely, my sisters, very likely that you are sitting in a very, very rigid position. You're not sitting naturally. You're not sitting comfortably. You're not sitting as if it is your own home. It's God's home. It's your own home. Because that is what God's home is. So you try this. Sit down comfortably. Let your legs be stretched out if you're sitting on the ground. Let your legs be stretched out in front of you. The position, the posture which you feel most comfortable with. Do not worry about who's watching you. Oh, the superior might come into the chapel and she does not like. Don't worry about the superior. Superior is mad. I say to you, God is not looking at your posture. God is simply looking at your attitude, my sisters. He doesn't look at the external posture. But how can you put your legs in front of God? The tabernacle is there. You're putting your legs. Then where should I put my legs? On my head? But my head also in the tabernacle. So you notice, sit down comfortably and you see how much better you will have this communion. But now you and I, we are sitting so rigidly, and after 5 minutes we feel tired. It's obvious. It's obvious you're going to feel tired after 5 minutes because you're so rigid in this place. And we look at your room, and you're sitting in a room where nobody can see you, and you can pray so beautifully there. Why? Because you're sitting as you want to. Close the door, sit down there and relax. Put your legs on the table. I often put my legs on the table here. When I'm praying, I put my legs on the table and I'm looking up and I'm praying to God. Lovely. That's a beautiful posture. So do that. Zacchaeus possibly chooses this sycamore tree, chooses this fantastic posture because he knows that he is going to have to wait and he is ready to wait. That is called preparing in advance. That's why I said he uses his mind also. Don't leave your mind in your room or somewhere else when you're praying. Take your mind along with your heart. And this is what he does. Now he waits. Sisters, there are two kinds of waiting. One is what I call a passive waiting. Another is an active waiting. The passive waiting is talked about by Jesus in Matthew chapter 24, verses 36 and 50, when he talks to us about those who are waiting actively. I mean actively. That we are like servants who are doing what we have to do. You ask me, how is it that I can wait actively? And I say, waiting actively is summarized in one phrase, in one sentence, which was the motto of one of our Jesuit saints, John Berkman's, RJ quod agis. RJ quod agis. It is spelled AGEQUODAGIS. RJ quod agis. And the English translation is do what you are doing. Very simple dictum. Do what you are doing. 3 Latin words, 4 English words. Do what you are doing. 5 English words. That's all. So now you're sitting and listening to me. Sit down and listen to me. And that's what Jesus means when he talks in Matthew 24, verse 36 and verse 50, Mark chapter 13, verses 32 to 37. The owner of the house has gone away on a journey and has left the servants in charge, and each servant is given his or her own responsibility. And what that servant has to do is fulfill his or her responsibility, not somebody else's. That's all. Can you imagine how simple it is? My job now, my responsibility now at this moment is to give you this talk. Your responsibility is to be present at this talk. That's all. That's all. And how complicated we make it. So this is what I call active waiting. Passive waiting is shown to us in the Gospel of Matthew chapter 25, verses 1 to 13. Matthew tells us about the 10 virgins. And already at the beginning of the story, he gives us the mystery of the story when he tells us that there were 10 virgins, and of the 10 virgins, 5 were wise and 5 were foolish. So already we know that there are 10 whom he divides into two groups of wise and foolish. Why were the virgins wise? Because they took oil in their lamps, not because they did not go to sleep. They slept. They slept as well as the one who were foolish slept. Both the groups slept. The wise ones slept. The foolish ones slept. So sleeping was not the point. Then what was the point? The point was that in the present, they prepared for the future. You remember earlier on when I spoke about the active waiting, we are present. In the present, we are preparing. We do not know about the future, but in the present, we prepare. So the wise virgins had already made provisions for oil at that moment. And that is why they had oil in their lamps for the future. But the foolish ones were not in the present, and that's why they did not have oil in their lamp. So it is not so much going to sleep before God. Obviously, if you can sleep before God, it means you're very comfortable with God. Those who sleep in the chapel, I have a great regard for them, because it means that they are so comfortable with God, they are sleeping in God's arms, that they are so happy to be in God's house, and that they have gone to sleep. And I see, what a beautiful sight. If I go to a chapel and I find people sleeping in that chapel, I can see them sleeping in the arms of God. That means they are so comfortable with God. They are not afraid of God. But you and I sometimes think, oh, God is going to get angry with me. How can I sleep in God's house? How can I snow? Those who snow in God's house, I call them the real saints. And so we can wait passively, we can wait actively. And the one way to wait actively is to make the preparations in the present moment. And to make the preparation in the present moment, we simply have to do what we are doing. RJ quod agis. And so we wait. Now, why is active waiting important? I'll tell you in a moment. And the Lord comes. And the Lord comes. Notice Revelation 3:20. I stand at your door and knock. The Lord comes, and it is the Lord who takes the initiative. The Lord knows the name of the man who's on the tree. You can imagine. Zacchaeus possibly would have been a well-known person in his village. Jesus would possibly have asked someone who this person sitting on the tree was. Jesus possibly saw, because of his great insight, saw in this man sitting on the tree a genuine desire by the look in his eyes. All these are possible. Luke does not tell us these details, but all this is possible. And that's why Jesus knows. And notice, Jesus is egoless. He will not wait for Zacchaeus to invite him. He invites himself into the home of Zacchaeus. But not forces himself. No, he does not force himself. He invites himself. Zacchaeus, come down. Imagine the shock that Zacchaeus would have had when he heard his name. How does this man know my name? I've only heard about him, but he knows my name. The name, my sisters, of a person is the sweetest sound to that person's ears. And the moment Jesus would have taken his name, he would have really gone to heaven in that moment. Zacchaeus, come down. I must stay in your house today. For the first time in this text, Luke uses the word today. Luke uses today many times in this text. The first time, Zacchaeus, come down. I must stay in your house today. Our minds go back to 951. When the days drew near for him to be taken up, he set his face to go to Jerusalem. Our minds go to chapter 19, verse 1. Just a few verses earlier, Jesus entered Jericho and was passing through. Notice now the change. Notice now the change. I must stay in your house today. Are you going to stay in Jericho? But you got to move to Jerusalem. No, I want to stay in Jericho. Now notice, there is a difference between what I call passive listening, listening with the ears, and active listening, listening with the ears and heart. The first is passive listening, where I do not hear a word of what the Lord is saying. And why don't I hear a word of what the Lord is saying? I can only see the Lord's lips moving. I cannot hear a word because I'm so caught up in myself. I'm so engrossed in myself that even though my eyes can see the Lord, even though my eyes can see the lips of the Lord moving, I cannot hear a word of what the Lord is saying. That is what I call passive listening. There is a listening with the ears of the head alone. And if Zacchaeus had listened with the ears of the head alone, he would have come down and he would have said to the Lord, Lord, you're welcome. Come and stay in my house. And he would even have said, because of his generosity, Lord, not only you, but your disciples are also welcome. He would have said, because of the money that he had, because he was very rich, he would have said, Lord, I'm going to give a feast for the whole village in your honor. This would what I call listening with the ears of the head. However, the listening of Zacchaeus is surely not a passive listening. It is not even a listening only with the ears of his head. It is a listening which is active, namely with the ears of his head and the ears of his heart, because Zacchaeus comes down. And Luke adds this praise. He came down and stood erect. Luke has told us earlier on, he was short in stature. So by telling us he stands erect, Luke is saying Zacchaeus is standing on his toes. Literally, Luke is telling us Zacchaeus is standing on his toes. Now, in the sight of Jesus, he has become tall. His external stature does not matter. His height does not matter. Now, he is the tallest of everyone. And there is no need of the crowd to be an obstacle. He can see Jesus clearly. Zacchaeus, come down. I must stay in your house today. Because Zacchaeus listened, not only with the ears of his head, but also with the ears of his heart, he stands erect and says, Lord, half my goods I give to the poor. Zacchaeus, I never talked about the poor. I never talked about you giving anything to anyone. I never talked about you having a lot of money. I only said, I want to come and stay in your house today. Lord, half my goods I give to the poor. And if I have defrauded anyone, I repay them fourfold. The response of Zacchaeus would have surprised everybody, surely, but would have surprised Zacchaeus himself. That before this, even Zacchaeus would not have known that this would be his response. So Zacchaeus surprises himself with his response, and he would not have known that he would respond in this manner. This is what happens when you encounter Jesus. You will surprise yourself with your response. And then, if you make a calculation, if Zacchaeus had 100, he has given 50 to the poor, he is left with 50 now. Out of that remaining 50, he says, he's going to repay fourfold to those whom he defrauded. And it is likely, because that is what tax collectors were known for, they were known to defraud people. It's likely that most of the 50 would have gone in the repayment fourfold. And so the question is, if Zacchaeus gave half his goods to the poor and repaid or those he defrauded 4 times, what would he have left? And the answer would be, he would have everything. He would have everything because he would have Jesus. And Jesus ends this episode, Luke rather, through the mouth of Jesus, ends this episode by saying, today. Once again, for the second time in these verses, Luke uses his favorite word, today. Today, salvation has come to this house. And so, my sisters, as you read slowly and meditatively these 10 verses of the Gospel of Luke, 19 verses 1 to 10, keep stopping and putting yourself in the shoes of Zacchaeus, in the place of Zacchaeus, walking along, not being able to see, running, overcoming the challenges by not merely running, but by also climbing the tree, then waiting, then listening, and then responding. I would like you to keep these steps in mind as a method of your prayer. And the first is the desire, the longing, the wanting to encounter Jesus. That has to be present if there is to be any encounter. You must want to see, because the Lord is too much of a gentleman to force himself on you. If your desire is genuine, it will show itself. Do you want to meet Jesus? Do you want to encounter Jesus? Ask yourself this question. Yes, there will be challenges, obstacles, hindrances, impediments, difficulties, problems, those, but look at them as challenges. And these challenges may be inside you, your lethargy, your laziness, your negative attitude, your frustration, the difficulties you have had in religious life. Those may be the internal. The external, I am too busy. The work has to be done. If I don't do the work, nobody will do it. That is external. So look at what are my challenges, my internal challenges and my external challenges, and what steps am I going to take to overcome them. Use your mind and use your heart. Be creative. Zacchaeus was creative. He was original. He was innovative. You have to be the same, creative, original, and innovative. And once you have taken those steps, then wait. No one knows the day or the hour. No one can say with certainty, this is when the Lord will come. No one. Only the Lord knows. Our job is to wait, and we wait in the present moment. We wait by doing what we have to do. We have to wait on the Lord. And one thing is sure, that if the desire is genuine, and if we show it in our waiting, the Lord will appear. And when the Lord does, do not be in a hurry to speak. Do not be in a hurry to converse. Wait and listen. Listen with the ears of your head. Listen with the ears of your heart. In the book, The Little Prince, there is a little prince who comes from outer space onto the earth. And this little prince meets a variety of people in his encounters. And one of his encounters is with a fox. And in this encounter with the fox says to the little prince, I am going to tell you a secret. It is a very small secret, and it is this. It is only with the heart that one can see rightly. What is essential is invisible to the eye. It is only with the heart that one can see rightly. What is essential is invisible to the eye. I change that to also say it is only with the heart that one can hear rightly. What is essential is inaudible to the ears. So the heart seeing, heart hearing, heart looking. Zacchaeus listened with the ears of his head, yes, but also with the ears of his heart. So listen with the ears of your heart, and my sisters, I can assure you that you will surprise yourself with your response to this Lord who will reveal himself to you. Glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world without end. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.